If you are getting started with quilting, you're going to need one of those, a rotary cutter. But how do you choose which is the best one and what size do you need anyway? So I've got you covered in this video and I'm going to tell you exactly what is what with a tinsy wincy tiny little bit of science. So I am Kim, this is Quilt with Kim. You're very, very welcome. Let's take a look at these rotary cutters. Let's look at sizing first then, because we all know that size matters, doesn't it? We've got some sizes here. There are mainly 4 different sizes. I know there are 5 rotary cutters here. These 2 are exactly the same. They're just different coloured handles. I think you can get pink ones as well. So these particular rotary cutters are Alpha. I'll tell you why Alpha is my favourite brand in a moment, but I can get rid of this one because it is exactly the same as that. It is just a different colour handle. So I'm going to move that over there and talk about the sizes. We have got 60mm, we've got 45mm, we've got 28mm, and we've got 18mm. Which do you choose for patchwork and quilting? Okay. The easy answer is you need to go in for your 45mm. The 45mm refers to the blade. It is the, I always get this wrong, it is the diameter of the blade. So that is 45mm across there. That's what it refers to. This is really the easiest and the most adaptable size that you can get going with when you're starting patchwork and quilting. And quite honestly, it'll last you pretty much for the entirety of your quilting life. That doesn't mean to say the same blade will last you the entirety. I will come on to that a little bit later. But this size of rotary cutter will do you for your quilting journey. Unless, of course, you do loads and loads and loads of cutting and you want to cut lots and lots quite fast, in which case your 60mm rotary cutter comes into its own. Now, as you may or may not know, I have an online shop, so I'm cutting a lot of fabric and I need to do it quite fast. So the 60mm, just because you've got a bigger circumference of the blade, go me getting that one right. The 60mm is just the diameter there, so you've got a bigger circumference that you can use to go through your fabric and it cuts faster. That is really the only difference between the 60mm and the 45mm. From a practical aspect, it will cut you faster and it will get through a bit more fabric as well. So if you want to layer up your fabric and cut through multiple layers, your 60mm handles that a bit better than your 45mm. But generally, your 45mm will do you proud for most of your quilting journey. Okay, so I'm going to park those 2 for a moment and look at the 28mm and the 18mm. So these 2, they look very sweet and you think, oh, I've got to get all those as well. No, you don't. If you're doing patchwork and quilting, you will very rarely use these. Maybe with a tiny little bit of cutting off ears off a, I don't know, with a triangle or flying goose or something, you might want to use a smaller rotary cutter, but it's nothing that your 45mm can't handle. So why on earth have they got 28mm and 18mm? Where they come into their own is with the crafters. If you're doing paper craft and you need to get really small, if you're dressmaking and you need to get into really little areas and tight areas, that's where these 2 come into their own. So really, dressmakers, crafters, go for it. For patchwork and quilters, sorry, then these 2, the 45mm and 60mm, will do you proud. You don't need these ones. The other thing with these 2 is that when we're cutting, we obviously go along the edge of a quilting ruler. So let me just show you very quickly. These rotary cutters are designed to go along the edge of the perspex of the ruler. And that perspex fits in this little gap here between the edge of the blade and this centre disc here. But that doesn't happen with these smaller 28mm and 18mm, oh, the blade's off, the 28mm and the 18mm rotary cutters. So you can't really use these with a a Perspex ruler, or you sort of can maybe, but not very successfully. So keep those for dressmaking and crafting. Use these ones for your patchwork and quilting, but your 45mm is the one that you're going to go for if you're a beginner, and that'll, say, stay with you pretty much for your quilting life. Having established what size we want, then how do we choose which brand we have? Because if you go into any of the quilt shops, if you go into the big shed hobby shops, we all know which ones we mean, whatever side of the world you are on, then you will be faced with an awful lot of brands of rotary cutter. And there is a difference between the pricier brands and the cheaper brands, no matter what they might say. To be honest, I had to have a bit of a science lesson from Nige, my husband, so hi Nige, to try and understand this. So I'm going to keep it really basic because I am not a scientist, but there is a bit of science behind how the metal is produced. So in certainly the UK, but I know this goes around the world in the main countries, we've got three main brands. We've got Ulfa, we've got Fiskars, we've got Clover. And those three brands are really recognised as the top end of the market. But that's actually what you want to look for, because when you compare the prices between the Ulfas, the Fiskars, the Clovers of this world to the cheaper end, the own label brands that you get, the ones that don't have that heritage brand name attached to them, you're paying for something different. Let me explain. On the cheaper brands, and I don't have a cheaper brand here to show you because I don't use them, on the cheaper brand, the metal, okay, all the metal starts off as steel. We need that. But with the cheaper brands, they have a type of steel which I think, and Nigel's going to tell me I'm going to get this wrong, but they have a carbon steel, and because it has got chrome in it, it is hard, but the edges of the blade, they will be sharp to start with, and then they ultimately end up, I don't know if softening is the right word, but the sharp edges will slowly soften or get blunt, and then they won't cut as well. Also, the housing that the blade in isn't as secure on the cheaper brands as you will get on the premium brands. So whether you're thinking of the safety aspect or the ultimate sharpness of your blade, both when you start out will be sharp, but you want the longevity of that sharpness, which is where these come into their own. Whether you're thinking, as I said, about the safety aspect or the longevity of the sharpness, then the cheaper brands probably are best to be avoided. It always seems to be a case of if you buy cheap, you buy twice. And I watch the comments in the Facebook forums, and new quilters will say, oh, I got this and it was so much cheaper than the other one and it seems fine, and look at all this cutting. But you want your rotary cutter to last you a lifetime, and this is where the premium brands really come into their own. So I think it is really worth paying just a little bit more to have what is essentially a primary tool for your patchwork and your quilting, and get yourself a good brand. What do these lot do then? So Ulfa, your Fiskars, your Clover, what do these do that are different? They all have a heritage with blades. That's one thing. Ulfa particularly, I know, used to make swords and they need to be sharp. When we're looking at the steel, it's a mild steel. I don't think that means it's of no good. I think that's the type of steel. So please don't ask me questions about the science of the steel. I'm not the one to answer you. But it is a mild steel that is being tempered, which allows the gentle curve of the blade and allows that sharpness to happen and allows the longevity of that sharpness to be there for you. We still need to change our blades. The blades have a lifetime of use. How long that is, I don't know, because it depends on how often you're cutting, what kind of pressure you're putting onto it, how many layers you're cutting through. It's just based on the quantity of the amount of cutting you have. So for all of us, it is going to be different, but you are going to need to change your blade. I know you can get blade sharpeners out there, and they will be fine for 2 or 3 sharpens, but what you're not going to get is that tempered way of how they sharpen the steel. Sorry, if you're a scientist watching this or a metal worker, you might be shaking your head in your hands. I'm not pretending to be an expert on this. What I'm trying to say, I guess, in layman's terms and quilters' terms, is that the steel that ends up in the premium brand blades is loads better than the steel in the cheap end of the market. So for the longevity of your sharpness, you want that more expensive brand and the blade. The other thing, because if you're thinking, well, why can't I just buy a brand name blade and put it in one of the cheaper cutters, the housing? Yes, you could do that. But as I said earlier, the housing that's in the cheaper brand, that I hear horror stories of them falling apart or bits coming loose or so on, and you really don't want that to be happening. We are dealing with a very sharp blade here. If you've had an accident with a blade, you'll know how sharp they are. It doesn't take much for it to go quite deeply into your fingers, and yes, I know it is horrible. We want our rotary cutter to be very safe for us to use. It's a dangerous piece of equipment, really. We need that to be safe. I am prepared to pay a few pounds more in order to get a safe piece of equipment for me to use. We always want one with the guard that's going to stay on. We want one that we can press the guards off and release, and the guard comes back into place. We need this whole mechanism to be working for us to keep us safe. And just as an aside, can I also just point out that if you've got young kids around, whether it's grandchildren or your children, please put your rotary cutters right away, because it doesn't take much, as I said, for these to go through your fingers. So we want good housing, good construction. These two, in fact, this rotary cutter was my very first one, so it's well over a decade old now, probably, I don't know, 12, 15 years or something, maybe longer. This is my first rotary cutter. It is still going strong. I change the blade when it needs changing. The 60mm I got when I opened up my physical shop, which I don't have anymore, so you can't come and visit me in a shop. But when I had my shop, and that was 7 or 8 years ago now that I had the shop, depending on when you're watching this. If you're watching this in the future, it could be eons ago. But this rotary cutter, my 60mm, is the same 60mm I used in the shop. It's still going strong. Yes, I just changed the blade and off we go. And I think with anything, you pay for what you get. I would go for one of the premium brands. Ulfa has always been my favourite brand. It was the brand that I was introduced to. I've tried the others. I always come back to Ulfa as a brand that I can really trust, that I use. Everything stays as it should be. Whether you're into a one style, if you want to use this right or left-handed, you can. You can get the ergonomic designs in Ulfa as well. So it covers off everything. As an aside, for scissors, I choose Fiskars. So it really depends on what brand you prefer. But I would encourage you to get going with a premium brand that will look after you. Get yourself a set of replacement blades as well. And for your quilting, start off with your 45mm and you won't go far wrong. And if you want to learn how to change a blade, check out the video that will pop up about now on the edge of your screen, and that'll help you change the blade. In fact, I think that was the very first video I ever recorded. Oh my goodness, how time has changed. I hope that has helped you, and I will look forward to seeing you again next time. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.